Does British politics need a radical left-wing party? 0345 6060 973, text 84850. Ask Alexa to send a comment to LBC. Joining me is Lindsey German, left-wing activist who has campaigned with Jeremy Corbyn on a number of issues. Lindsey, thank you very much indeed for joining me. Why do we need a new radical left party in this country?
Well, Ali, I think that's a fairly obvious question when you look at the discussion you've been having and the discussion that's been going up and down the country. I noticed today there was a sound cloud of people who were asked what they thought of Keir Starmer's record over the last year, and the word that came out most was disastrous. And I think many people who voted Labour felt that they would get better than the Tories. They now find that they've been attacked over a whole range of issues, including the disability benefits, including the two-child cap, including the winter fuel allowance, which has now been pretty much restored, but was one of Labour's first acts. So there's that. There's also the question of Palestine, where I think we need a left party which can reflect what is majority British public opinion in this country, which is support for the Palestinians. And I think you implied that this was coming only or mainly from the Muslim community. And I have to say, as one of the people organising the demonstrations over Palestine, that just simply is not the case. Opposition to what Israel is doing is across the board in British society, and many people are saying that we don't want Labour to continue in this path. We also feel that they are opening the door for the far-right policies of reform, and there needs to be a left alternative which challenges this.
Do you think, Lindsey, that it has been primarily driven by the Palestine issue? The only reason I was mentioning those seats in particular is because the majorities are wafer thin, and these are the kinds of seats that they might be wanting to target. Do you think it's driven primarily by that issue, or also by some of the economic conversations we were having around welfare cuts and other things as well?
Absolutely. It's a whole range of things. People traditionally expected from Labour that they would benefit as working class people. Working class people's living standards have fallen in recent years, and people are struggling. There is absolutely no question that people are struggling over housing, they're struggling over employment, they're struggling over the health service. You can go through a whole range of things, and you'll know from talking to your own friends and families that this is it's a very cogent issue for millions of people across the country, and they don't feel that Labour is delivering. In fact, they feel that Labour is attacking working class people while doing nothing to curtail the wealth of the rich or to control the landlords who are making so much money. So it's about all of these things. I would say it's kind of Palestine plus might be a way of putting it, that people feel very strongly over Palestine, and they feel that Keir Starmer was completely wrong to say that Israel had the right to cut off water and electricity and so on to the people of Gaza. That's done tremendous damage.
He subsequently rode back on that, but he did say it in this very studio, I think.
Yeah, he subsequently rose back on quite a lot of things, but by that point, the damage is done. And I think people will look to the idea, Jeremy Corbyn, who I've worked with for many, many years, and Zarah Sultana, who I think is a very principled young woman, who, again, I've known from various campaigns. I think the idea that they will be part and only part of a new party, I think, is encouraging to many people.
Why did he look like he was caught off guard by all of this? I mean, do you know if this was in the offing? Because it seemed to come a bit out of the blue towards him.
I know there's been a number of talks about it involving various people. I'm not involved in those talks myself, but I know they've been going on. I don't know the detail, but I think you're absolutely right, as you said earlier, to stress it's not really about the gossip or the tittle-tattle of what goes on. It's about whether we need this party. And the question, in a way, Jeremy Corbyn is a very popular figure. I know this doesn't come across in the media, but I can assure you,
no, he has.
If he speaks in a city in Britain, he'll get a huge attendance, much bigger than most Labour MPs would get. And I think people would see him as part of the leadership as a very, very important thing.
Lindsey, do you think that this will do nothing other than split the left? I mean, the Labour Party got in with like less than 30% share of the vote. We heard about that from one of our callers in the last hour. It's not exactly, I mean, they're on a pretty sticky wicket anyway, electorally. I mean, this is not going to help the left in general at all if you split it.
Well, the trouble is, Keir Starmer's whole raison d'etre in the last 5 years has been attacking the left, and people put up with some of this because they felt they wanted a Labour government. He's continued to do so. So he's losing votes to the independents, if you said, in places like Ilford and in Birmingham. He's losing votes to the Greens. He's losing votes to the left, and that will continue. And that has to be realistically dealt with. And if Labour is going to continue on this path, yes, it will split the Labour vote. And it's very important there is a left alternative for people. And the truth is, if you had 10, 12, 20, 30 MPs of the left, of a new party in the next parliament, I think that would actually help move British politics to the left and would be a very important development.
Lindsey, I mean, look, let's be fair. Jeremy Corbyn had his chance. He did lead the Labour Party before. He led it to practically to oblivion. Do you think that the conversation has now changed specifically around Palestine, but also some of these other issues as well, that actually people are willing to take another look at him? Because when he was leader of the Labour Party, he was an unmitigated disaster.
Well, I don't agree that he was an unmitigated disaster. If you look at his vote in 2017, it was much higher than what Keir Starmer got last year when he got an overall majority. So Starmer got a loveless majority, as people sometimes call it, and quite rightly. He's disliked for very good reasons. Now, with Jeremy Corbyn, he was also attacked by his own party. And many of the people who are now in Starmer's government spent a lot of time attacking him. He didn't have, I don't think, in any way a fair chance to develop that leadership. And as you say, he lost heavily in 2019. I think now, I don't think Britain is a particularly right-wing country. I know the image is that it is a right-wing country. I don't think so. I think there's a tradition of wanting equality, fairness, wanting all those sorts of things, and caring about what happens to people in other parts of the world who are being treated badly. And I think a new party of the sort that is being talked about, I think would definitely attract a lot of people. I think people who just think, oh, Jeremy Corbyn, he's a disaster, are really missing the point, particularly when this is what people are pinning on Keir Starmer.
Lindsey, what's going to happen to his allotment if he goes back into frontline politics?
I know Jeremy quite well, and I know that he will continue with his allotment as long as he is able to do so.
Very good to hear. Thank you very much indeed, Lindsey German, the left-wing activist who has campaigned with Jeremy Corbyn on a number of issues.
We don't need a radical party. We need a party that governs us, that loves this country. Corbyn was thrashed when he stood in the election because he wanted to get rid of the bomb and he wanted to get rid of the monarchy. And so the great British public don't want that. They want both of those things. They want a fair country. They want a country where they can develop. And if Starmer, who I believe does love this country, he may be not as professional as perhaps he could be. But if he does love this country, if he wanted to be radical, he would explain to the great British public that there are, amongst the people who claim benefits, cheats. He doesn't use the word cheats. If, for example, he had a moratorium and he said, look, on November the 1st, I'm going to stop all benefit payments except for those who have a justifiable claim. Now, so look, I think he's got to be radical, and he's got to be radical as well in terms of immigration.
I understand that, Roland, but he's not being radical. So therefore, on this particular thing, you're saying Starmer needs to get more radical, but what do you say to people who'd be very happy to see Corbyn back in frontline politics?
No, look, there's always going to be a minority. The Conservatives had a crazy gang on the right, and this government has a crazy gang on the left. Starmer is intelligent enough with his majority to understand the tea leaves of the past. He knows that good government is strong government. And the two things that really irritate the people up and down this country, with whom I work, by the way, is illegal immigration and benefit cheating.
I understand that point, but what if now, as you could see this week, I mean, we were just talking about it for an hour in the last hour, if Starmer is peeling off and having people on the left of his party, and it's not just a fringe minority here, I mean, there's hundreds of over 100 MPs effectively are pushing him around, and now there's a new party going to open up potentially on the left flank that's really out to the radical left. That's going to cause him all sorts of problems. How does he prevent that happening? How does he keep people on side? How does he keep people like Zarah Sultana in the tent rather than going off and setting up a new party?
By going over the heads, like Blair did, like Thatcher did. She went over the heads of the naughty gang, and she appealed to what she knew were the real sentiments of the British public who love this country. Well, it's not said enough. There's no point politicians, radical, somewhat may, saying, "Oh, we love this country, the Far East or the Middle East." They have to love. We do love this country. Roland, does Jeremy Corbyn and Zarah Sultana not love this country? No, they don't.
Who do they love?
Because they're always undermining us.
Okay, who do they love? So, sorry, not to sound like LL Cool J, but who do they love?
I don't want to go into their personal loves, but they don't love this country. And Corbyn was clear enough. He wanted to get rid of the bomb, and he wanted to get rid of the monarchy. And these are the two things that this country really understands, values, and loves.
Go on.
Yeah, there's left-wing values. Yeah, there's left-wing values like power to the people, people before profit, and redistribution of wealth. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we can see any of those values with Labour. I think with Labour, what we get is power to corporate Britain. We get corporate Britain before profit, and we get redistribution of U-turns. So absolutely, Jeremy should go ahead. But to be perfectly frank with you, while I'm aware that people use this term left-wing, as someone who's politically homeless, for me, we don't need a left-wing or a radical left-wing party. We need a whole new bird. We need new forms of representation, and we need authenticity because we're not getting it.
That's interesting. Do you think that Jeremy Corbyn and Zarah Sultana are tapping into a broader malaise and actually could re-energise British politics from the left like Nigel Farage has done on the right?
Possibly, but we need to hear what their manifesto is. I think one of your previous questions is what should they be proposing? I remember when Jeremy Corbyn was trying to get going before, he was wanting to offer free broadband. He needs something radical like that, free broadband, a new banking system. We need radical change because the way it is at the moment, it is just absolute meh. It is absolutely rubbish. Okay. I mean, your previous caller was a young man, and he's dreaming about leaving.
I know.
So we need to have complete change. And if it comes from Jeremy Corbyn, all the power to Jeremy, but we need complete change for me.
Okay. Thank you, William. Appreciate your call. Sorry for the delay on the line there. Jack in Dagenham, good afternoon.
Hello, Ali. I find it sickening that you should use the word radical.
What's wrong with that? Why is that pejorative? What's upsetting about that?
What is upsetting about that is that, Ali, in the 80s, Maggie Thatcher sold off our council houses.
Yeah, she was radical. Yeah.
Exactly. And look at where we are now. Mm-hmm. House prices sky high. Mm-hmm. British kids can't form relationships because they can't get housing over their head and have children. We had council housing because the state felt it necessary to step into the housing policy and increase the stock of housing. The stock of housing we had then, council houses, suppressed the private prices, which allowed working class people and middle class people to afford housing.
Okay.
We also had Iron Bevan, the state taking a lead role in developing the NHS, which we are all proud of.
I agree, but then, Jack, why were you upset about the word radical, though? Radical is a good thing, isn't it?
Exactly, but you're using it as a pejorative.
Not necessarily. You thought it's pejorative because that's the way your mind works, Jack.
No. We can all sense it on this side of the radio dial, the way you're using that word. But let me say something.
Go on.
I think my vote is there for Jeremy Corbyn and Miss Sultana if they start this party, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Because ideally, I would like to have a hung parliament so that they could have a role, hopefully, fingers crossed. Because I want our foreign policy to come back to this country rather than be handed over to the Israelis and their lobby groups in Parliament.
Do you think, Jack, that is the main driver for this movement, or do you think it is also about redistribution, taxing the wealthy, the fact that people at the lower end of society feel that they're being completely stuffed all the time? What do you think is the biggest driver for this?
I think the biggest driver of this are both ends. Our foreign policy, number one. Number two, yes, jointly, our foreign policy. It has to come back because we need to be represented, and we're not being. It's a diminishing of representation in this country. I think that gets on people's backs. Just to remember that Keir Starmer misread his backbenchers on welfare reforms, and he's also misreading the mood of the country when it comes to foreign policy. And I think having, hopefully, a hung parliament where this new parliament can exercise a bit of power, will be to the benefit of us all.
Thank you very much indeed, Jack. Jack wants a hung parliament to actually have a little bit more balance as he sees it in the political dialogue. What do you think of all of this?